Coming up on today's episode of the Salesman Podcast.
If somebody's listening to this and they're in sales and they're building their career and they're 27, you got to choose your friends wisely. The key people you're going to work and spend the most time with the next 10 years in your career is going to dictate the future ascendancy and height of your career.
Hello, Sales Nation. I'm Will Barron, host of the Salesman Podcast, the world's most listened to B2B sales show. If you haven't already, make sure to click subscribe. And with that, let's meet today's guest.
Hey, this is Chip Eichelberger. I am a sales motivational speaker. I've been called on from everybody from Hyatt to Harley Davidson to Genentech to open or close their conventions. As you're a sales professional, most of those meetings are not awesome. So that's what I try to do, is try to bring interaction, energy, and a great message that'll help you sell more and be better at what you do.
In this episode with Chip, we're diving into how you can improve your levels of peak performance, why you have to pay the price, why you've got to have discipline, some strategies to manage all of this, and a whole lot more, how you can stand out in the marketplace. And so with all that said, let's jump right in. And where I want to start though, because I feel like with my peak performance, I'm in the best shape. I'm in the kind of in my A game. I'm thinking bigger when I have a clear vision, when I know where I want to go, whether that be 5-10 years from now. Is that the smart place to start with improving and getting to a level of peak performance in our B2B sales roles? Or is there perhaps a better way to go about it?
Well, one of my favorite quotes actually from the Bible, from Proverbs, it says, without vision, the people will perish. So you've got to see where you want to go, what's going to get you excited, what's going to get you up early, not just for your business career, but I think for the marriage, for the impact you want to make, for how healthy, how vital you can be. Because there's a lot of people out there, I think going through the motions. And when you're going through the motions, you don't really want to pay the price because you don't see what the impact is going to be. So getting that vision, what it looks like for you, especially for salespeople. I mean, for me, I know about for you, it hasn't really been about the money, although money is great. It's always been kind of about winning the game and playing the game and trying to keep up and figure out where I am right now, what's going to get me to that next level. That's why you said you started this podcast. You wanted to get better. You've got to constantly improve. It's not really about working harder. It's about working smarter on better deals that'll really make a difference and how to more elegantly persuade people to move forward. So I think vision is a good spot. But my advice when I get in front of people is for you to be the best salesperson, you need to be the best person in general you can be. And everything affects everything in terms of marriage, in terms of relationships, in terms of health, exercise, all of that plays in.
So let's dive into this, being the best person. This is something that I'm conscious of this year. I don't know where I read it or something was incepted into my brain. But at the beginning of the year, I had this thought that if I wanted to become this person in 5 years' time from now, which involves owning property, running this business and growing it, and rather than just having a single audience, I want to envelop sales leadership and do other content for those people. And hire people, have an office, have staff. There's all kinds of things that go into that vision. I thought to myself, or I probably didn't think this one implanted it into my brain, but it came about as if I was unhumbly thought it myself. I was like, well, if I could become that person now, then that will probably accelerate a lot of the learning of going through the trials and errors of getting to that place. So very literally, I started dressing more professional. I started dressing like the person would dress who owned an office, who couldn't be in their pajamas recording these shows. I've done a lot of these shows, Chip, with smart upper top and kind of pajama bottoms or casual trousers underneath. And nobody knows other than myself. But I thought, well, perhaps I can trick my subconscious a little bit by, again, trying to be the person that I want to become. Is that a legitimate strategy, or am I just kind of barking up the wrong tree with some of this?
No, I think so. I mean, I've been doing what I've been doing 24 years. In 1988, I happened to hook up with Tony Robbins. And so I was there, almost 6 years, all over the US, UK, Australia, kind of planting the flag. And that was one of the things we used to talk about is act as if. Act as if. And there's a big part of success, I think, is people do judge you quickly. Do people judge the way you dress or your shoes shine? A lot of salespeople out there, if your office is a mess, if your car is a mess, you got samples all over the place and, fast food wrappers. I think how you do anything is a reflection of how you do everything. So acting as if you're doing better, breathe that way, move that way, dress that way. I'm just a big believer that it's still fairly easy to be successful because so many people are satisfied with being mediocre. And when you are excellent before, during, and after the sale, and you're doing little things in a systematized way that get repeated, obviously, that get people to go, wow, hey, gee, that's amazing follow-up. Geez, you actually wrote a handwritten thank you card. You actually sent a little note. You actually sent a little gift. You actually followed up and got the testimonial. You asked for referrals. You thanked me for a referral. If you're doing those little things, you just stand out, because most people are kind of boring to deal with. They're not fun. I think there's an element of entertainment and fun in sales if you want to do well. Tony used to talk about people would rather be entertained than educated. You got to know your stuff, but you've got to be fun to do business with.
So, Chip, with all that said, it seems like then, so vision, being the person you want to become, acting as if, I think was the phrase that you used there, that's all well and good. And sales is the best game, right? Because you only need to be 1% better than the competition if it's, going out to tender, if there's multiple quotes out there, and you're going to win the business. So I'm not saying here that the audience need to be the next Elon Musk to have perhaps success in sales and to be financially successful in that area. But how big do we need to think to, and you said this line at the beginning of the show, to get ourselves out of bed in the morning? How big does the vision that we need to have be? And the answer is probably, it could be anything, I guess. But how big do we, what I'm getting at is, how big do we need to think before any of this actually works for us?
Well, it depends on what you're becoming in pursuit of what you want to accomplish. If you get such a big vision that you want to attain XYZ, but you're not sleeping, you're not exercising well, you're not eating, your marriage is going to pot, that's not going to be a good trade. I think you have to look at, what does success mean for you? How do you define that? So I guess an exercise I would give people that I've done for 20 plus years, if you Google my name and secret goal strategy, you can find a video describing it. But basically, it's getting clear right now. Looking forward, we're early in 2019. If you're listening to this live, maybe you're going back and listening to this in May. You don't know. But any time of year is a good time to do it, is to decide what you want to accomplish. What does success look like for you in your business in terms of sales, in terms of awards you want to win, in terms of President's Club, in terms of breaking your barrier on your biggest sale, but also from a family standpoint, what's important to you? From a health standpoint, where are you going to maintain your standards? What are you going to weigh? How often are you going to work out? What are you going to quit eating? From a fun standpoint, in terms of date nights, in terms of personal goal standpoint, in terms of, you said you want to get better, what are you going to read? What are you going to listen to? But most importantly, for some of you out there, there's some stuff you're listening to right now is not worth your time. There's some things you're binge watching on Netflix, not worth your time. So you kind of have to really get clear. And so what I've done, I kind of lead people to an exercise. I've got a Word document where, here are the key roles I play. Here's what I want to accomplish per area. How I'm going to hold myself accountable. What are the numbers in those areas? Because if you can't track it, you can't measure it. And then what kind of person you need to be to live that. And I actually laminate that, and I put it on the mirror in my bathroom, or I put it in my shower. Typically, I just laminate it, put it right in my shower, where you can look at that every day, kind of moving you forward, because it's easy to miss what you want to accomplish. It's easy to get busy and forget about it.
Well, Chip, that was a great answer to a terrible question. So I apologize about the question. I think what I was trying to get at there was, how do we know when we're thinking big enough? And for myself, for reference, every year I look back at the previous year, I've achieved all my goals, and I go, damn it, I could have done twice as much if I'd aimed twice as high. And it would have been the same amount of work. And it's just my mental kind of how willing my subconscious is to kind of let go on things. So to rephrase the question, and the answer might still be the same, but how do we know whether we're kind of shooting big enough for all of this?
Well, I think part of it is what you're exposing yourself to. What is normal for you? I mean, who are you hanging around? Who are your mentors? It's been said, I don't know who to credit it to, but kind of look at your 5 best friends, take their income and divide it by 5, and that's probably your income. You may need to start hanging around people who think a little bigger, do things on a little different level. You may need to listening to things a little differently. Are you listening to Tim Ferriss podcast? You're listening to some of the best minds out there. Kind of get you going. I guess my strategy for that, I call it the 4% solution. 4% of your day is 1 hour out of 24. So 4% of a week is 7 out of 168 hours. So you've got to be putting in to think bigger. You need different distinctions. And if you're only listening to this same stuff over and over, reading the same stuff, you got to branch out to see what bigger even looks like from you, because you don't know what you don't know. But I guess in my gut, my piece is always, what does bigger look like for you? But what is it going to cost you to go after that? Some people make bad trades in terms of burnout or health or relationships. So I just think that's where I caution people. Think bigger, but you got to think smarter. How can you get there smarter? And I think back one piece of advice to one of my mentors, people in the sales world, obviously probably know Jeffrey Gitomer, a Little Red Book of Sales, for example. He's been a friend of mine through the National Speakers Association for many years. And for example, in my business, people, I say, hey, what's your fee? And he said, Chip, your fee is in your head. It's whatever you can congruently state, because people in my business can make a lot of money for an hour, 90 minutes, but it's not the hour, the 90 minutes. It's the last 25 years of experience and the value you bring to that hour or that 90 minutes that really makes a difference. So part of it is just to expand your belief system based on what's possible for you. And I think exposing yourself to new information can kind of help you do that.
Perfect. That makes total sense. And something which we don't really touch on all that often on the show, but you mentioned it up front here, is sleep, exercise, marriage, or I guess home life. How much does this affect? I don't know, it's difficult to put a number on some of these things, but how much does that affect our in-work performance? Because I feel like we cover a lot of sales hacks, techniques. We have psychologists on. I've just interviewed a guy from Yale University about first impressions and the research and all this kind of stuff. We seem to focus, well, not we, I focus on all this stuff, but I know myself, if I eat a pizza, the next day I feel like crap and I don't do any work. I'm slightly allergic to dairy, which kind of doubles down on the problem. If I have a green smoothie, that sounds like a total hippie, a green smoothie, if I've been to jiu-jitsu the day before, I've done some exercise, I have whatever for tea that's relatively healthy, I have a good night's sleep, I get way more done. And that is more effective for me than any hack, trick, kind of technique or anything else that we cover on the show. So is there a percentage? Is there a percentage that we can, of our sales performance, that you could perhaps tie to all the stuff out of sales as well?
Oh, 90? I'll put a plug in. You talked about the green smoothie. I've got people Google get switched on smoothie. I'll put that up against any smoothie in the world in terms of health and vitality. It's interesting when companies hire me, because what I do is I open or close. It's the big convention. It's the once a year. It's the President's Club kind of thing. And so I don't know what they're expecting from me. My brand about getting switched on is really about reevaluation. It's about acknowledging the gap between where you are and what's possible, visioning, game planning, mindset, how to bring your best you to what you're doing. And I don't know what people expect. I always put some sales things in there and some business things in there. But for most people to take their business to the next level, you can't do it without taking yourself to the next level. My mentor, Jim Rohn, if people don't know Jim Rohn, Rohn, Google him. He passed away about 5 years ago. And the key is who you're becoming in pursuit of what you want to accomplish. And if you're not constantly getting better, if you're not in peak physical shape, if you're still smoking, for example, and you want to be a peak performer, seriously, all the information about smoking, and you say, still a good choice for me. Where do you make other decisions like that? All the research shows for people, if you want to have a more productive day, work out in the morning, get your physiology changing. It gives you a different mindset, gives you a different mental sharpness when you go out there. I'm big in routines. I mean, every great athlete, whether they're going on the soccer pitch or whether they're playing tennis or whether they're playing golf, when they have to perform, it is showtime. They don't wing it. They have if they're going out for a big appointment, it's a $2 million deal. They just don't walk in. How you doing? I teach people to ask yourself a simple question. Where am I now? 0 to 10. 0's comatose, 10 absolute certainty. If you're not at a 10, don't walk in. Go into the fire escape, stand, breathe, visualize what exactly you want to accomplish. Breathe that way, stand that way, do something to get your body ready, then walk in. Because you said you had the Yale professor talking about first impressions. That is so crucial. Mm-hmm. People judge you quickly. And so you've got to put yourself into an absolute sense of certainty so you can transfer that. I think people want to deal with a professional, not an amateur, and they're going to judge you quickly. People want to be led. People want to be persuaded, but they don't want to feel like they're getting sold. Everybody loves to buy, obviously, but they don't want to get sold. So how can you set that up for yourself?
You literally just took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say, everything you're describing is the difference between a athlete, a professional, someone who goes on the field, plays whether they feel good, bad, regardless. They've got a system in place versus the amateur goes, in the UK, we have Sunday league football or
Yes,
soccer, but
sure.
it's actually called football. I'll battle
Right.
that one to the grave. But,
Yes.
but it's cold, it's wet, it's a bit icy. Me wife or partner hasn't washed my kit. It's a bit smelly since training on Wednesday. I'll not bother. That's the difference, right, between the pro and the amateur. So with regards to that then, Chip, what else does a professional do that perhaps an amateur doesn't?
Well, I think mindset. I mean, you mentioned the bad weather situation. My passion is golf, for example. And, Jack Nicklaus, he always used to tell the story. He loved it when it was bad weather. Why did he love it? Because half the field would bitch and whine and moan. They're out of the tournament before it started because they already told themselves, oh, this is going to be terrible. It's going to be cold. I'm not going to play well. Jack's like, oh, fantastic. Great. Tell yourself that. So it's the ability to be a thermostat who can self-adjust and not the thermometer who this good thing happens up, bad thing happens down. How can you bring your A game in spite of everything that's happening around you? And I believe it's a duplicatable skill with a routine based on how you think, the questions you ask yourself, how you visualize, a lot of positive self-talk. I'm a big believer in listening to the right songs, right? Before you get there, music can be a state inducer for you. I believe motion creates emotion for sure. Because when people got their mojo going, you got a little swag going, you get your A game going, there's a way you walk, there's a way you talk, there's a way you breathe, and that is duplicatable. That's why I think what I talk about, I'm talking about long-term success, right? You got to realize you are your number one asset. You got to take care of me incorporated in every sense of that first, so you can give back to other people. If you want to have long-term sustained success, if you're not taking care of your number one asset, there's no way to have long-term sustained success.
To turn this on its head slightly, because we're talking about things to add, change, do. Is there anything that salespeople should be removing from the, like, other than the obvious, like smoking? If you're smoking, you're an idiot. I'll go on record saying that. I won't put words in your mouth, Chip. But you're
I agree. Yes, we're good.
You're an idiot if you're doing stuff like that. If you're getting drunk Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, and you want to be a high performer Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday in the midst of the drinking, it's you maybe you're not an idiot, but it's clearly not a good thing to be doing. If you're smoking weed, if you're doing all this, if you're eating unhealthy, these are all obvious things that we perhaps shouldn't be doing. Is there anything less obvious or counterintuitive that we can pull away from our lives that in doing so gives us more chance of success?
Well, I'll plant a seed for people. It's one of the themes I have, and it's really, motivation is great, but motivation comes and goes. What sustains you is the discipline to get stuff done. And I like to talk about, don't underestimate the power of one new discipline you put into play, because one new discipline here can impact everything else. And what I talk about is people complicate change. They think it takes, so long to change. Well, actually, change usually comes down to a trigger moment where you realize, my mentor, Jim Rohn, used to say, for example, disgust is a powerful motivator. Somebody might be listening to this, for example, if they do smoke, you go, you're right, it's disgusting. It might not have been us, but maybe it was their son came up to us and said, Daddy, can you quit smoking? I don't want you to die. And in that moment, they make a decision. And a streak starts with one. That's the seed I want to plant. Any new decision, you start a streak with one. People have always heard about the 21 days, right? There's no valid study to say there's anything unique about 21 days. But what you do is you start a streak. And for example, I started a streak on my phone. I wanted to get stronger. And I read an article about the guy, and he says, what was your discipline to stay strong? I play golf. I want to hit the ball farther right. And he said, I just make sure I do 10,000 push-ups a year. Sounds impressive, right? But do the math. 10,000 divided by 365, a little bit more attainable, 28 push-ups. But it's 28 push-ups a day, every day. So I'm on a 51-month streak. I'm 86,000 something push-ups in. You have to put this down and do a full push-up, touch your nose to it, right? And I've committed I'm never going to do less than 28 a day the rest of my life. And just the discipline of getting that done. I've missed a couple days the last 1,800, but not many. That one new discipline can impact everything. So I guess the metaphor for people is that 28 push-ups a day will knock out your 10,000 push-ups. from a lead magnet situation, prospecting, attracting new leads, attracting referrals. What are the little activities, the 28 push-ups a day, you have to do day in and day out to fill your sales funnel, to hit your number at the end of the year? Break it down to the minutia of the little activities you know you can get done. And I talk about bring your best self to it. Couple little things I would recommend for people. I don't know if you can see on my, I've got my stand-up desk right here. I'm doing this off my sit-up desk. Getting a stand-up desk is essential for people if you're thinking how long you're going to be in your career. Managing your emotions, managing what you put into your body, thinking about how you can have a high energy day, because sales is a unique animal, right? Not everybody can do it. The ups and downs, the wins, the losses, the difficulties, the back end pieces you can't control from customer service or installation or rollout or whatever it's going to be. You got to find a way to be at your best. And what does that mean for you in terms of the way you take care of yourself, in terms of what you put into your mind or what you purposely push out of your mind? It's got to be a routine that you get done.
How do we instill the discipline to do 28 push-ups every day? I have no doubt, Chip, that you could put your mind to pretty much anything and do whatever you wanted every single day. And it's, I don't know so much about your kind of like childhood and if that interacted with it. I'm from a very just, normal family. There's no kind of military. Well, there's military further in my family, but it didn't affect me. So there's none of that kind of like discipline and that influence. I'm very average up until the past kind of 3 or 4 years where things have started to explode because I've done what you've said. I've started to get people around me. I've got people around me that are opening my eyes to the different things that we can do. We're building, I won't kind of like dive into it too much, but in the sales school, which is our kind of like self-development product for salespeople, we're building this. We're building habit trackers into it that at the end of 2 weeks tells you were super lazy every single Friday for, beyond 2 weeks for the past 3 months. You miss out on 20% of your selling time by being a lazy bugger on a Friday. So I'm conscious of all this and I'm implementing it myself, but I'm still not very disciplined. Having said all that, and I'm open and honest to people on the show, I have to use willpower. I've not sussed out that switch, if there is a switch. I've not greased the groove. I've not got my neurons aligned and myelinated to get into a state of discipline and to do it over and over and over. Whereas my girlfriend, for example, is super comfortable in going, right, I'm going to commit to this every day, an hour a day for the rest of my life. She's a doctor, so she's revising for the moment and it's just done. She's doing 2 hours a night. I'm going to bed at 9 o'clock. She's up at 11 o'clock, wakes me up when she goes to bed, so it's pointless me going to bed at 9. But she just doesn't think about it. And so I'm intrigued as in your experience with discipline, do you think this is genes? Do you think this is a learned response? And if it's learned,
okay, good.
If it's learned, how do we do it?
Well, one thing you have to be very careful what you're saying to yourself. What did you say? I just don't have the discipline. Well, your past does not equal your future. That's the power of, and for me, just hearing that story, the guy said push-up app, boom. I just went to my phone immediately and thought, I'm going to do that. And so what you have to do is to catch yourself. I would encourage you, download the push-up app. I've got a Droid, there's tons of them out there. If you got an iPhone, download it on your iPhone, start doing it today, minimum 28 push-ups, and see what happens as you go. And you got to be careful what you say. Look at the discipline I have now. I'm getting better every day. I'm building discipline. I'm building confidence. What happens is it's like a record. Bill, I've never had that discipline. Most people, I'd work out in the morning, Chip. I'm just not a morning person. Well, God, how many times have you told yourself? A streak starts with how many? One time. So you've got to put it into a system where you got your workout clothes there, you got your bag done, you got your clothes, everything's in the car, get out of bed, put on your clothes, boom, go out the door. But I really think it comes down to self-talk. And you've probably told yourself, I've never been that kind of person that's had that discipline. I've never been that kind of person that's had that discipline. Well, you go from somebody who didn't have the discipline to today, you made a new decision to start doing the 28 push-ups minimum to get your 10,000 a year. That one new discipline, I know it sounds bizarre, but that one new discipline impacts everything else. And you say, look at the discipline I have now. And it's the pattern of saying, I have discipline now in this area. Where else can I apply that same discipline in my life? And what I challenge people is, and if people want to Google it, you Google get switched on energy schedule. And I've done it for hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people the last 24 years, every audience. It just says, I must work out a minimum of blank days a month, at least 30 minutes, getting your heart rate up, put your minimum number in, then sign it. Then it says February, and you'll have 31 boxes. And then you write March, 31 boxes, 6 months like that. There's 5 tips that'll help you probably get to 80 or 90 in your life with high energy. And you put that on the mirror in your bathroom and you start tracking it. And it says goal and it says actual. Actual, and the end of the month, what do you have to do? Go back and count up the numbers. Well, people, what does this have to do with making President's Club this year? If you lack the discipline to do something that simple, to take care of your number one asset, where else does that lack of discipline affect your life? And if you get better in that one area, I've got so many stories over the years of people who, they started getting in better shape and they looked better and they felt better and they got better clothes. And it just, that one thing impacted everything in their life.
With all that said, Chip, are we just, and I'm guilty of this perhaps with the show and the audience size that we have now. Are we just overcomplicating all of this? Is it almost as simple, and it's simple but effective what you're describing? Is it almost as simple as that?
Well, my mentor, Jim Rohn, again, if you've never heard him, ROHN, Jim would say, all the things that are simple to do are simple not to do.
Yeah.
All the little things. It's simple to follow up with a great email or a little personal card. Hey, I'm excited to be working with you. I know I can meet your expectations. I want to build a partner with you for life, right? Because my belief in sales, it's easy if you stand out and say, okay, what can I do before, during, and after the sale to turn my customers into my raving fan salespeople? Because I get such a high percentage of my business off referrals and recommendations. You got to start thinking, okay, what would I do? I do this, I do this, I do that. So it really is simple, and making it fun and try to stand out and do what the failures won't do. My philosophy of long-term success and getting switched on is you got to figure out what's really important in your life in terms of your family and your health and your exercise and your personal growth and your faith and having fun and your business and your finances. And there's only a few simple things you need to do every day in each area, but you need to know what they are. You need to be cognizant of it, and you need to get them done. I love this quote when we had it from Tony. We were talking about, you do your goal setting session for the year. You ever done that?
Yep.
And you say, oh gosh, you overestimated what you could do in a year, right? Mm-hmm. But you underestimate what you can accomplish in a decade, because it's the power of doing the right thing over and over and over. How have you built this podcast? How are you going to build the back end? Well, gosh, when you started, you're probably past where you thought you'd be now in 3 years, but where are you going to be in 2 or 3, 4, 5 years? The power of doing this day after day and doing it right and getting a little better builds on itself. And we started off talking about the vision. That's where it starts. What does a great life look like for you? What does a great career? What does a great family? What does a great body look like for you? What are the little things you can do to move towards that? Because again, everything affects everything. And how you do anything is a reflection of how you do everything. So one new area you get better can impact every area.
How do we implement this, Chip, in the obvious example is if probably the more example I was going to say, if we're at home and our wife or partner is a nagging bastard and is always kind of dragging us down, maybe we should get rid of them. We'll stay away from that one, because that might be a slightly more kind of a fiery topic. But let's talk about the business world. What do we do if we're in an office and we're excited, we're motivated, we're in kind of peak performance mode, we're kind of in sync, we're going back and forth, we're having this great time, and then people are coming over to us and moaning, or perhaps our sales manager wants us to do all these random tasks which are not helping anyone achieve anyone's vision, but we've kind of got to half-ass do some of them because we need to get them off our plate so we can focus on the other stuff. How do we not necessarily control, but how do we deal with people within our environments that are disabling some of this kind of proactivity?
Well, that's not easy. I've been lucky. When I was with Tony, we had some very, very positive teams. I've never really had to deal with that. But again, part of it, I think, goes back to your attitude and how you can take ownership of your attitude and not let that stuff bother you and not let that bring you down. And it comes back to the 4% solution. What are you listening to? What are you reading? What are you watching? Where your mind goes and where your focus goes, that's where your results go. So, it's like I always give the advice. I've been speaking to I live in Knoxville, Tennessee, University of Tennessee. I've been down speaking for some of the schools down there, the engineering school recently. And the advice I give these kids is right now, for example, in college, you got to make some decisions who you're going to hang out with. Law of association, right? You're going to become like the people, the information you spend the most time with. So right now, you got to figure out which of your friends you're going to cut out. If somebody's listening to this and they're in sales and they're building their career and they're 27, you got to choose your friends wisely. The key people you're going to work and spend the most time with the next 10 years in your career is going to dictate the future ascendancy and height of your career. You got to find out to deal with people who are better than you, who are going to push you, not the people who are going to bitch, whine, and moan and drag you down. You have to disassociate from those people. So I think if you have good ownership of your attitude and you're walking in and you know, hey, it's showtime, those little things don't impact you. Because if you're in sales, you're going to get the email, you're going to get the word that a big sale fell through and it didn't happen. Next.
Yeah.
You just got to let it go. Don't bitch and whine and moan about it. Dissect it. Oh, I didn't do this. I didn't do that. I didn't know. Then go to the next one. Not easy, but you got to take care of it here first.
So and that's what I wanted to wrap up on here, Chip, of clearly this isn't easy. And I'm not necessarily talking about rejection here. I'm talking about more, sales is up and down. That's why it's so incredible, because it's a game, right? If it was all just ups, or if it was all miserable, no one would do it. But the ups and downs are integral to it being exciting. At least for me, it is anyway. And then it goes for business, entrepreneurship, everything else. For anyone who has a side hustle, anyone who's kind of growing things in the audience on the side as well. But with that said, and self-talk might be part of this, how do we stay motivated throughout those lows? Because I know when I was younger, I'm better at dealing with it now because I see the bigger picture on things, and the day-to-day stuff, in my opinion, doesn't really matter most of the time. That's how I talked myself out of being kind of annoyed at different things that have gone on throughout the day. But when I was younger, I'd be on a high, I'd get, say, 5-6 sales in a row, I'd be crushing it, and then I'd have a terrible month. And it wasn't like I was depressed. It was still happy and positive and optimistic. But then it would take me a little bit, and I'd get these chains of results, and then it'd drop off, then chains of results. And it's never going to be the unlimited chain. Otherwise, you'd be hired by whoever for like billions of dollars a year, of course, because you'd be magical. There'd be something else going on there. But how do we either limit the lows, or how do we knock ourselves out of the lows a bit quicker?
Well, I think we talked about that analogy of the 28 push-ups. I mean, to fill your funnel, what are your 28 push-ups? What are the little things you're doing each day before, during, and after the sale to fill your funnel? Are you, I'm a big believer in the first 5 and the last 5. If you're in sales, get in a little bit earlier, call people before the decision maker is there. Last 5 minutes of the day, call when the decision maker has the gatekeeper gone. How can you consistently figure out, for my business model, for what I have to do in terms of prospecting, lead generation, referral generation, if you just know I'm doing those little things every day, the numbers are going to be there. Because sales, what happens? It happens in my business too. I'll have like booking, then nothing. Inquiry, and it's like slow, then bang, bang, bang. That's just the way it is. Because if you're doing the little things every day. What I would caution people on is to slow down, think long-term with every relationship you have. Many businesses, referrals are huge. Number one, most people, you got to be great to get the referral. Ask for the referral. Somebody gives you a referral, reward them. In some business models, you can't do this, but in some you can. If somebody referred you for a $200,000 piece of business, and they're a golfer, get them a fitting with a pro and get them the new Callaway Epic Flash driver, and maybe you spend $500. And they just gave you a referral for $200,000. What are you going to do so that person is a referral center of influence, will constantly reap benefits in the future? And you're doing it because it's the right thing to do. I just was doing a program for James Hardy that does the Hardy siding and dealing with these contractors. I go, what's an average, replacement siding? This is more of a B2C model, but about $50,000. They give you a referral. What do you do? Thank them. Like, do something unique that's personable that they're going to talk about. So if you back up and have a long-term view with sales, if you're not sending out, I'm a big believer in, are you familiar with the Love Pop cards? Have you seen these?
No.
On Shark Tank, if people go Love Pop, you can get these. And it's a beautiful card. You can see this, but you open it up and it's 3D. Can you see that
Yeah.
orca whale right there? I mean, it may cost you $7 or $10,
Yeah.
but here's the key. If you send a card like this to somebody, what are they going to just throw it in the trash? They're probably going to show it to how many people? And they're probably going to, but Chip, I can't afford $10 thank you cards. I don't send them out to everybody in every situation, but when I want to make a point and I want to stand out, these are great. These are really cool. So what are you doing to be a little different, a little bit unique, make people remember you and talk about you?
Chip, to wrap up, because you mentioned this a few times now, so clearly it's important too, which means via me, it's important for the audience, and that is standing out. Are there any ways other than the obvious of, be a good person, understand your product, be able to add value, be able to follow up effectively? Is there any counterintuitive, is there any interesting ways that the audience should be thinking about standing out in the marketplace as a B2B sales professional?
I think one way is number one, be a professional. A quick little story. I remember I was staying out in Newport Beach, California. I stayed at a very nice Marriott. Then I happened to have the next event was in Dana Point at the Ritz-Carlton, which is one of the most beautiful properties in the country. I remember talking to the bellman at the Ritz-Carlton. And those guys can make $80, $90, $100,000.
Wow.
And I was saying, boy, the service at the Marriott was good, but you guys are just amazing. He goes, yes, we are professionals. And I thought, what a difference. If you want to be a professional, you got to be a cut above, because remember, most people are satisfied with being average. Let me give people a tool. This smartphone right here is your best training tool. There's a voice recorder on here and there's a video camera on here. If you want to be better at what you do presenting, periodically on the phone, you need to record yourself. Going in, I have it in my backpack over there, but I've got my little tripod. And go in and say, you know what, I constantly want to improve the way I present myself. I think the best salespeople are the best storytellers. Be a capture of great stories of people just like them, exactly in the situation they're in. You were working with them, had the same product problems, had the same pain points. You were able to go in with your hardware, your software, your product, and solve it and tell that story. So what you do is you go in and say, you know what, I'm constantly trying to improve my presentation skills and make sure I'm listening. And this is one option. Instead of taking such copious notes today, would you mind if I just put this in the back there and videotape it? And many of you right now have to do stand-up presentations. You're at a boardroom table, you're 3, 4, 5 people. I would wager 90% of you have never seen yourself live in front of the customer. If you want to take what you do to the next level, it's going to show you, how do I open my presentation? What stories am I telling? How am I overcoming objections? Am I listening as well as I think? How am I using tie downs? How am I building commitment? How am I using social proof and testimonials? Because if you don't go back and get periodic tests, you're probably going to make the same mistakes over and over and over. And it takes some guts to videotape yourself, and it takes more guts to go back and watch it, because I guarantee you're going to go, because you think you're better than you are. So if you want to get better, go in and go with somebody who's better than you and say, hey, here's a presentation I did last week. Would you coach me on it? Your brain will not get it until you see yourself. People can tell you all day what you're doing, but until you can see it, you have no concept. That one tip right there, taping yourself every month, getting a mentor, getting some feedback on word choice, stories, tonality, eye contact, proximity, how you engage a group. Nothing will take your career farther than that.
It's funny you should say that, as just before I recorded the show with yourself, Chip, and this may not work for the audience depending on when shows go live, but I'll link it in the show notes when it does go live. I had a conversation with a researcher out of Yale who essentially researches what you're describing of our subconscious is terrible at, and our consciousness on top of that is terrible at understanding ourselves. It needs video, it needs feedback, it needs something. There's no feedback loop for our brain to know whether we suck or whether we're good at something. And I used the anecdote in that episode of, I did a presentation. I used to sell to surgeons. There'd be 20, 30 surgeons in a room, and I wouldn't be selling anything. I'd be teaching them something about the product or the kind of the future of the industry, the endoscopy industry, and by proxy, kind of selling and branding to them. And I recorded one. I did it for 2 or 3 years, and I recorded one of these presentations, and they always went down a treat. Everyone kind of got a lot out of it. And I'm tall, I'm 6'3", I'm lanky, I have terrible posture. I know this, but my posture in the presentation was terrible. I don't know if it was nerves underneath, but I was hunched over, my arms were slightly in front of me. And at this point, I knew all about body language and I knew how I should be standing. And it wasn't until I saw the video, I was like, holy heck, I looked like, and I'm not an athlete by any means, but I didn't look well. You know what I mean? And especially in a suit, it was almost accentuating the visual appearance of it. So that next day, it was a 2-day event. I literally just stood there with my shoulders back, immediately looked far more confident. I was slower with my speaking, and there was cascading effects down from that. Not necessarily that the audience, maybe they didn't care, maybe it didn't have an impact, but those 2-3% points where you can get better by just watching a video, listening to a call, that all adds up, right, over the years. That's how we kind of get this compounding. And I guess is my conclusion for the show, to wrap up, Chip. I guess the compounding effect of everything that we talked about, that's what moves mountains over the decades, right? That's what we're kind of aiming for with all of this.
Absolutely. I mean, it's, Cambridge Handbook of Expertise and Expert Performance came out, and the key thing that separated good performers from peak performers was deliberate practice.
Wow.
Not just practice, but having a specific way to practice. That's why this can give you more deliberate practice than virtually anything. Most people won't do it, which is shocking, because they're like, I don't think I can do that. Well, just ask people. Either they're going to say yes or they're going to say no. Or you've got a customer that's worked with you for 5 years. Hey, John, I'd love to try. Would you mind? Oh, sure, go ahead. They're not going to care. But it's you've got to care.
And if you're a pro, you should care, right? It should be that. That should be the default. I think that's what I'm getting from all of this.
For some people, I'll do companies will bring me in to work and videotape and train their corporate evangelists, 10 or 12 people at a time, videotaping them. And we'll do an exaggeration exercise, for example. And I want you to go too big of gestures. I want you to pause too long and exaggerate everything. And so they're doing this, and to them, it feels like, oh my God, this is crazy, right? And then they watch the videotape and go, that's pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah.
To them, it felt like, you know why? Because most people are presenting, hi, this is Chip Eichelberger. They don't have the contrast in terms of everything to make it interesting. Until you see yourself, you don't get it. So.
Yeah. Look, you have to look at episode kind of 1 to 250 of this show. Where
wow. Congratulations. That's awesome. Good for you.
But I don't know, from the perspective of it was terrible. I was an inch away from the camera. I was arms by side. There was no ups and downs. I was speaking way too fast. I still speak way too fast. There was not enough pauses. There's still not enough pauses. But just from watching my own show, you could see the improvements, and hopefully the audience can see it as well.
You don't know what you don't know. And here's the key: better done than perfect, right?
Precisely. Well, with that, Chip, I've got one final question, mate. Something that I ask everyone that comes on the show, and that is, if you could go back in time and speak to your younger self, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give him to help him become better at selling?
What advice would go back and selling? I started audio recording myself when I was with Tony Robbins fairly quickly. I would say for me, it would be database. I wish I would have had better technology of the database when I started in the speaking business 24 years ago. And I really had a way to keep up with those key decision makers as people move. My database is not, if I'd have done that, would have been a lot better. It's better now but if I had the last 24 years and the last 1,000 customers and I had a better way to stay in touch with them, that would be it.
And we're spoiled right now for that, aren't we? With smartphones and technology. And I remember once in medical device sales, a chap that had been with the company for 40 odd years. It was incredible. One of the best storytellers I've ever heard in the whole of my life. Surgeons were registrars and junior doctors when he first was interacting with them, and now they're all consultants. So he'd come on patch and tell these incredible stories. But the one story I remember really vividly was he used to have a binder in the back of his car, and then I was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, to keep track of all the information, you'd go into a meeting and physically write it down. And he said it would go from 1 binder to 5 binders to 15 binders. His boot was just full of binders and it was all organized. And then he wanted to call someone. Well, there's no smartphones. There's no cell phones. He'd have he said the two things he carried with him was a massive jar of 10p's and 20p's so he could put it in a payphone. And he never was sure whether anyone was going to show up for meetings when he would go to meet a surgeon, because he couldn't get in touch with the surgeon They couldn't get in touch with him. And it was almost on a whim and a promise that they were going to be there at the scheduled times. And he said he said now, he always called us kids. And I probably could be his kind of son age-wise. But he would always drill it into us that we've just got it in such good time right now. We can research anyone. There's the internet. We can track all of this. And, it's he called it the golden age of sales.
Right. Well, if people want to stay in touch with me, my website's getswitchedon.com. Also, I don't know if this will work from the UK, but if in America, if you text CHIP to 66866, you can get on my list and get 5 free videos and kind of get it on auto serve. You can get off anytime you want to, but real good, valuable information that I think could make a difference for you.
Well, that doesn't work from the UK, but most of the audience are in the US. So that's perfect. I'll link to everything that we talked about in the show notes of this episode. And with that, Chip, I want to thank you again for joining us on the show.
Hey, you're welcome. I just say this, I'll praise people for listening. I mean, if you watch this and you listen to this kind of stuff, it says a lot about you, because how you do anything, reflection of how you do everything. So congratulations.